Hello! Welcome back to my channel. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. So, bit of a weird video for today. Sort of stuck for ideas, more or less. So I decided, because we are almost, well, we're getting, I don't say almost, not really almost, we're getting ever so closer to the end of 2021, which is, frankly, terrifying. I thought I'd go through some of my favorite books that I read in 2020, the big pandemic year. So in total, last year, I read 128 books, which I got to my goal, which is 123. That's my usual average for what a good year in reading looks like. Lots of different stuff. Got to read a lot of stuff for uni, and just I tried to branch out a lot more, as you'll see. So yeah, let's get it started. These are in no particular order except for one of them, but I will talk about that one when it comes up. So, first off, we have Arsene Wenger's My Life in Red and White, his autobiography. Now, I am an Arsenal fan. I think that's made very clear by the content that I have made in terms of football books, and the fact that I spent a lot of money to get this from the UK because we can't get the hardcover in Australia, which is fantastic. Thank you, Australian Publishing and all that jazz. Yeah, this is great. Growing up until I was, almost 21, Arsene Wenger was the only manager of Arsenal that I'd ever known. I couldn't imagine a world without Wenger, and he left. Which I still don't think he should have. That's the purview of another video, which I probably won't do because not a lot of people like all the football content. But nevertheless, this one is really good. It's not so much a typical footballer book. Like, I've read a few, and I've read about a few, and you get a lot of them where it is just statistics, or, oh yeah, this season was really great. I scored 10 goals, got 15 assists, went out every night. It's very much his philosophy on life and, how he views the world. And I think that's fantastic because he is more than just he's more than just a philosopher, like a manager. He's a philosopher. He revolutionised A, how Arsenal Football Club operated, and B, how the Premier League really operated. He was one of the big ones in making football more what it is today. And I think this quote by him really sums up what this book and what he's about. It is, don't be scared to be ambitious. It's not a humiliation to have a high target and to fail. For me, the real humiliation is to have a target and not to give everything to reach it. And I think it's fantastic. And I just love Arsene Wenger. I'm sorry, I just do. Next up, we have Raphael Bob-Waksberg, Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory. Now, for the first 4 months of last year, I pretty much binged all of BoJack Horseman, obviously. I'd never watched BoJack Horseman, and I loved it. So, of course, I had to buy this. This one is fantastic. I love the short story, A Most Blessed and Auspicious Occasion. I love honestly, I don't think there's a single bad story in this entire collection. I think it's just utterly phenomenal. It's so different from some of the stuff Waksberg has written for BoJack Horseman, but then you get some of that real nit and grit that makes BoJack so fantastic. There are no anthropomorphized animals in this, but that doesn't matter. We don't always need them. Next up, we have The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. I read the first law in 2018 in my big 202 book year, which was not the intention and not what I expected to do, but I did nonetheless. And then it took me a while when I got to Best Served Cold to really get into it. So I went off Abercrombie for a bit. And then I came back onto him last year, and The Heroes is fantastic. It's a 3-day book, which is not something you always necessarily get. I know some books take place over like an evening, but in terms of fantasy, you don't get a lot of books that are over this short 3-day period. And there's one chapter in this book which takes place in a battle, not like a full-fledged battle, but it's pretty full on. And it's like 17 different perspectives. So we start with character A. Character A is charging the hill, gets killed by character B, and then when character B kills character A, go into their perspective, and so on and so on and so on. I think it's freaking cool. Like, even if you don't want to read the whole First Law, you still have to read this, because it's so much about the military and what actual fighting would feel like. That gets brushed aside in fantasy because it's down and dirty and it's in the mud. And it's just great. I love Joe Abercrombie. Read Joe Abercrombie. Next up. So, last year, the first book I read for the year was Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. I'd watched the film, but I'd never read the book. And so, I did some further reading, and I found out that Carine McCandless, what's his name? Chris, idiot. Chris's sister had written a book, and it was so eye-opening of just all the stuff that went along and happened that never got mentioned out in the film or the book. And I think it was a really great companion piece. And if you're a huge fan of Into the Wild, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice in not reading this, because there's so much. But when you read those sorts of books, there's so much that you don't get in the whole like, you'll get the investigation, you don't get what life is after, maybe apart from one chapter. You don't get what people are experiencing, and it gives so much extra context about why Chris McCandless did what he did. And it was beautiful and heartbreaking and horrifying, but that's life, really. And then we have one of the top contentions for the year. Not the top. Everyone's heard about it. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Came out in November. I've read it twice. Thinking about reading it a third time. It's just so good. There's something so magical about the Midnight Library. And yes, some people might call it childish or surface level. But it doesn't matter. If you want to live your life hating on books like that, fine. Go ahead. Not everything needs to be really deep and prosaic and meaningful. I mean, look at The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Terrible book. Very surface level. But look how many people have drawn meaning from it. And I think having that reassurance that, you know, even if you've made a lot of mistakes, I'm just looking at the bags under my eyes and I'm looking, like, even if you've made mistakes in your life, like, there's still some opportunity for things to get better. And I think that's something we need, especially in the sort of episteme that we're living in. Yeah. Read The Midnight Library. And then read Notes on a Nervous Planet and How to Not Die, I think. I'll put it in the edit. And then we have $10,000 of January. For a long part of last year, this was my number one pick. I think it's a great exploration of storytelling and ahistorical fiction and magic and race and classism and empiricism, and it just does so much for so many different people. And I think it was gorgeous. Like, January's journey into America and the different worlds she visits are just so fantastic, and the description and the prose is gorgeous. I've yet to read The Once and Future Witches, the new book by Alix E. Harrow. Gonna get around to it. Not really been on the fiction, I know, but yeah, do this. It'll change your life. And if it doesn't change your life, send me an email about it. We can chat about it. Then we also have Library of Unwritten. I know I talked about this like 2 weeks ago, but it was one of my favorites from last year, so I'm legally obligated to talk about it. I had no idea what this book was about. I just thought the cover looked cool when I picked it up at my local bookshop, which I now work at. Lucky convenience, that. It was great. It was really it was just awesome in ways that, you know, it dealt with what is a story and what stories can mean to people. And I think, like, you get that with Erin Morgan's The Starless Sea, but The Starless Sea is quite divisive. I know. I hate it that it's divisive. I love that book. But yeah, so I'll read you a quote, and if it sounds like something up your alley, go ahead. Here is how you make a sheet of parchment. Soak a pelt in a scouring bath until it softens. Scrape the hair off. Treat the skin with astringent tannic acids. Rack and torture until tight. And here is how you make a story. Soak a life in mortality. Scrape the soul. I think that's gorgeous. You should go read this. The biggest book on the list, Rhythm of War. Sanderson himself. I got the first copy of the book that came in at work, even though there was a delay about 4 hours because the shipments weren't coming in. I finished this in 24 hours, real time. I don't know what it was in reading time. It's 1,200, close to 1,300 pages. I don't know how I did it. Still don't know how I did it. Guess this is the Sanderson. There's something about Sanderson that just, he is utterly unique in what he does in terms of magic systems and epic fantasy and just everything, really. I'm a bit upset I read it so fast because there weren't a lot of people I know who had read it, so I couldn't talk about it to them, which is a shame. And yeah, I really want Stormlight 5 to come out as soon as possible, but I know if that does happen, then I gotta wait even longer for the next ones. Alright, the penultimate book on the list, and actually the last book that I read for the year, we have Middlemarch by George Eliot. I read this because of a certain person's suggestion, and I loved it, even though I found it a lot funnier than I think they thought it to be funny. I think it's really funny in that terms of Austen, Pride and Prejudice sort of style. I think the characters are all idiots, which is great. I love reading about idiots. And I think it was really good. Calcibon, however you pronounce it. What a prat. And the young Polish lad's on tour, I called him when I'd read his name. It was great. I think it was really good. If you like Austen, read Middlemarch. I'm still waiting for it to get that style of BBC adaptation. If there is one, I haven't heard of it, maybe I'll watch it. And now, my favourite book of 2020, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. I'm aware this came out in... When did this come out? It came out in 2018, 2017 even. I didn't get around to it till last year, as is with Middlemarch. It came out a lot longer. I read this twice last year. It was that good. It changed how I view medicine, the Tory party, politics in general. And it sent me down a path of reading about 15 other medical memoirs over the last year and a half. I think this book is phenomenal. I think everybody should read this book because it's really eye-opening in terms of, like, you get all these medical dramas where it really sanitizes what it'll be like. And because of how heartbreaking and hilarious this book is, I think it really does a lot in demystifying what working in medicine would be like, especially now more than ever in terms of what all healthcare have had to go through in the last almost 2 years in terms of the pandemic. I think you need to read this book, more or less. You need to read it if you know anyone who's a nurse or a doctor or works in medicine, or you have any interest in keeping medicine as it is, at least in Australia. We have government-assisted medicine in forms of Medicare, and this book really does a lot in saying why the American system is so busted and broken. But yeah, read This Is Going to Hurt. You'll cry, you'll laugh, and you will become a better person out of it. Anyway, that's it for this week. Unsure what I'll be doing next week. I think I've got a lot of assignments, but I'll try and get a video out. Not sure what it'll be yet. Didn't know what I was going to do for this one until about 10 minutes before I started recording it. So there you go. Enjoy your week. See you next time.